I used to think keeping quiet was the price of love. Every time they mocked me, I smiled. Every time they lied about me, I stayed. For years, I told myself that silence kept the family together. But that night, when my stepmother laughed across the table and said I was too poor to be wearing this, reaching for the pin on my chest, the last thing my mother ever left me, I felt something inside me close for good. My name is Sylvia Raymond, and I've spent a lifetime earning respect in places where kindness was mistaken for weakness. That night, I finally understood. Silence wasn't peace. It was surrender. And I decided I was done surrendering, no matter who had to learn that the hard way. I still remember the smell, not of cake or candles, but of perfume that didn't belong in my father's house. It was the kind that tried too hard, sharp and floral, spreading through every room until even the walls felt foreign. The scent of oil and salt that once meant home had been scrubbed out, replaced by something expensive and hollow. The dining table shimmered under the weight of too much glassware. A banner read, "Happy Birthday." Henry. Though half the guests didn't know him beyond polite nods, they belonged to Denise's world, manicured, chatty, and allergic to silence. My father sat quietly at the end, smiling the way people do when they're trying to disappear. Denise floated between groups, her laughter carrying higher than the music. She introduced me with a flick of her wrist, as if checking a box. "This is Sylvia, my husband's daughter. She works for the government, something with veterans, I think." The room nodded, unimpressed, and turned toward Jacob, her son, who was bragging about a new venture that sounded more like a rumor than a business. I served wine, cleared plates, played the invisible daughter. My father caught my eye once, a silent apology buried in the look. Denise noticed and tightened her grip on his shoulder during her toast. "To family," she said, smiling like she owned the word. Everyone clinked their glasses. When the night ended, I washed dishes while she lingered nearby. "You still use those veteran discounts?" she asked. Her voice dipped in honey. "Such a smart habit, stretching your dollar." I said nothing. My father didn't either. Some silences have lived too long to be broken. Hours later, the ocean wind followed me home. My phone buzzed. An email from the Department of Veterans Affairs. I opened it and stared at the words, "Official Recognition Invitation." For a long moment, I just breathed, relief, disbelief, something in between. Then, quietly, a thought settled in the back of my mind. Not everyone would be happy to see this. The next week I went back for dinner, hoping it might feel different. It didn't. Denise had surrounded herself with her usual circle of Charleston women, the kind who wore too much perfume and never missed a chance to remind each other how blessed they were. The table sparkled with crystal and laughter that never reached anyone's eyes. I sat at the far end, half a spectator, half an exhibit. They spoke of resort memberships, home renovations, and husbands who still looked good in golf pants. When the talk shifted to children, Denise came alive. She swirled her wine, smiling wide enough for everyone to see her dental work. "My Jacob's just launched his own tech company," she said, proud as if she'd built the thing herself. "He's brilliant with money." A pause. Then, softer. The add-on that always came like an afterthought. "And Sylvia, she's steady. Works for the government. Bless her, steady." The word landed with the same dull weight as pity. The women nodded politely, already done with me. One asked what kind of work I did, before I could open my mouth. Denise answered for me, "Paperwork for veterans," she said, very noble. The conversation floated away to handbags. After dinner, I stepped outside, desperate for air not perfumed with pretense. Through the window, I saw Denise leaning toward one of her friends, her voice low but clear. "That medal thing she's getting? It's nothing special. They hand those out like attendance certificates." The friend giggled. My father, standing near the porch light, froze mid-step. I watched him pause, shoulders tightening, then turn back inside as if the moment had never happened. That was my father's way, kind, weary, afraid of conflict. I drove home with the echo of their laughter stuck in my chest. Years of service, years of building something that mattered. And in that house, I was still nothing more than a story rewritten by someone else's vanity. 2 nights later, I opened the cedar chest at the foot of my bed. It had followed me from every base to every apartment, smelling faintly of salt and old paper. Under folded letters and photographs lay a small velvet box. Inside, my mother's rescue insignia pin, gold, worn, shaped like a seagull in flight. She'd worn it on her last mission over the Atlantic. She never came back. I traced the engraving with my thumb. Atlantic 1997. It wasn't jewelry. It was proof. Proof that women like her, like me, had served, bled, and been forgotten anyway. The next day, Denise dropped by. Uninvited as always, she spotted the pin on the table, her eyes narrowing just before the smile formed. "That's lovely," she said. "Where'd you find it?" "It was my mother's," I answered. "Be careful wearing that to the ceremony," she added lightly. "People might think it's fake gold. You wouldn't want to look pretentious." I almost laughed. The woman dripped with rhinestones, yet worried I'd seem fake. "I'm not wearing it to impress anyone," I said. "Then why wear it at all?" "Because it's mine." Her smile faltered. Just for a second. But I saw it. The first crack in her perfect face. That night. I pressed my uniform, laying the pin beside it. My mother's voice came back to me. A memory more than a sound. Respect isn't granted by rank. It's earned by how you carry yourself. I didn't know yet how much that would be tested. The next morning, Denise announced she would attend the ceremony as family support. My father nodded, grateful she cared. I said nothing, just placed my hand over the insignia like it might steady me. Before leaving, she posted online, "So proud of our Sylvia for her little recognition next week." A true family moment. Her use of our burned hotter than the insult. The match had been struck. I just didn't know how big the fire would become. The house felt staged, too perfect, too quiet, like a showroom waiting for a buyer. I came with a framed photo of my mother, thinking Dad might want to bring it to the ceremony. He sat at the table with papers spread out before him, reading glasses low on his nose. Denise hovered behind him, perfume strong enough to fill the room. "Almost done," she said brightly. "Just having your father sign a few things for the store expansion. We're growing." The word "we" made me uneasy. I leaned closer. Real estate documents. A line that should never have had my father's name on it. The deed to his house, the same one he built with his hands after my mother died, was signed over as collateral for Denise's boutique. "Dad," I asked quietly, "you used the house for this?" He rubbed his temple, eyes tired. "It's just temporary. Denise says it's smart business. The shop's doing well." Denise smiled, that glossy, empty kind of smile. "You worry too much, Sylvia. That's your military brain, always preparing for an attack." Her laugh was soft and poisonous. I wanted to scream, but the sound stayed locked inside my throat. Then Jacob appeared from the hallway, drink in hand, smirking like he owned the room. "Relax. Sis, Mom's got a head for money. You just handle those sad old vets, right? Let her deal with real business." Dad's look was sharp, but he said nothing. That was how things worked here. Silence was cheaper than truth. Later that night, I laid out my uniform in the guest room, pressing the sleeves flat, centering the metal case. The air smelled like wine and tension. Denise appeared at the doorway, glass in hand, eyes glinting. "I'll wear red tomorrow," she said. "It photographs well. Don't forget to smile. No one likes a stiff soldier." When she left, the silence folded around me again. I sat on the bed, hands trembling. The insignia pin gleamed faintly from the nightstand. Gold against navy. I picked it up, tracing its worn edges. "Mom," I whispered, "I hope you're watching. Because tomorrow, they will." The next morning dawned clean and bright. Charleston sky sharp as a blade. The National Maritime Museum shimmered in the sunlight, crowded with uniforms and polished shoes. Flags framed the stage, the air thick with pride and salt. I pinned the insignia just above my heart. Dad adjusted my collar, quiet as ever. Denise stood beside him in a red dress that burned against the light, smiling like she'd rehearsed it. "You'll thank me later," she said as we entered. "You need someone who knows how to mingle with people who matter." Inside, the sound of heels and whispers echoed under the vaulted ceiling. I spotted colleagues, faces calm and proud, their applause steady when my name was called. I stepped forward, heart steady, shoulders straight. Then it happened. A tug, sudden and sharp. Another. The weight on my chest vanished. Denise's voice sliced through the microphone echo. "You're too poor to be wearing this. That's fake!" The hall went silent, gasping as cameras clicked. My body froze, disbelief turning to heat under my skin. She pulled again, and the pin tore through my uniform, scraping the flesh beneath. I stumbled backward, hands shaking. Then, from the audience, a voice, aged but strong. "Ma'am, that's not jewelry. That's a rescue insignia from the Atlantic Mission, 1997. I was there when her mother earned it." A hush fell so complete, it hurt. Captain Charles Redding, a retired Marine, stepped forward, cane tapping against the floor, chest lined with ribbons. He looked at Denise, not angry, but disappointed, deeply, utterly. "Do you not know who she is?" he asked. "She's the daughter of a rescuer. She's served this country longer than your words have weight." Denise stood frozen, her hand midair, color draining from her face. Dad stepped beside me, flushed and shaken. "Sylvia, I'm sorry," he whispered. I didn't answer. I pinned the insignia back onto my chest, crooked but unbroken. The ceremony continued, the applause a distant hum. My heart pounded so hard it drowned out the rest. When it finally ended, I stepped outside. The ocean wind cut through the heat, cool and sharp. Captain Redding followed, his cane soft against the pavement. "I hope I didn't overstep," he said. "Old habits die hard. You didn't," I told him. "You stood where no one else would." He smiled faintly. "Your mother saved lives that day. The least I could do was save her memory." He paused, eyes steady. Some people see metal and think value. Others see sacrifice and feel small. When he turned to leave, I looked through the museum glass. Denise stood alone inside, surrounded by people who wouldn't meet her eyes. She reached for my father's arm, but he didn't move. And in that still moment, something inside me cleared, like a sky after a storm. You can't reason with someone who fears your worth more than their own failure. I touched the pin, warm now from my skin, and whispered into the wind. "It's still mine." The video reached the internet before I reached home. Someone in the crowd had caught everything. The flash of Denise's red dress, the moment her hand tore across my uniform, her voice cutting through the microphone like a blade. By morning, the clip had more than 200,000 views. The headline read, "Woman insults veteran at medal ceremony." The comments were relentless. "Who raised her? That's why you don't bring social climbers to military events." I didn't share it. I didn't comment. I went to work, shook hands, and said nothing. But silence has never been Denise's language. That afternoon, she posted her own version of the truth. It was a misunderstanding. I only tried to fix Sylvia's uniform. I would never disrespect a veteran. Her photo came with it, same red dress, bright smile, captioned family pride, not drama. The internet wasn't fooled. Her page filled with fury. Her boutique's rating plummeted overnight. 2 news stations called me for interviews. I declined both. Denise, of course, didn't. She told them I'd overreacted, that I'd let a private moment turn into a circus. Jacob joined her chorus online, posting that I'd left the Air Force because I couldn't handle the pressure. By evening, strangers debated my life like a sport. Our family had become entertainment. My assistant peeked into my office. "Ma'am," she said, "do you want me to filter your emails?" "No," I told her. "I know what to delete." That night, Dad called, his voice worn thin. "I don't know how to fix this." "Sylvia, you don't have to," I said. "Just stop protecting her from it." A long silence followed, the kind that says finally, "You're right," he whispered. "I should have drawn the line sooner. It's not too late," I said. When we hung up, I sat in the quiet. It didn't feel like victory, just relief, the kind that comes when a truth, long buried, finally stops fighting to breathe. A few days later, a courier left an envelope at my door. Denise's handwriting, elegant, looping, desperate. Inside, a letter. Apologies laced with excuses. She was under stress. The media had twisted everything. Then the real reason. Maybe we can host a charity event together. It'll rebuild the boutique's image and show unity. She wasn't apologizing. She was recruiting me to clean her mess. I almost laughed. That evening, I drove to the pier. The water was gray, the wind cold enough to sting. I tore the letter into strips and dropped them one by one. The ink bled fast, words dissolving into the tide. Behind me, gulls cried. Ahead, the ocean swallowed every excuse she'd ever made. The next morning, Dad called again. I moved out, he said. I couldn't stand the house anymore. Where are you staying? With an old Navy buddy. Then softly, I should have stood up for you sooner. You just did, I said. 2 days later, Denise posted a photo, alone in her empty boutique, captioned starting over. The comments were cruel. Charleston's polite circles turned their backs, not out of principle, but contagion. Shame spreads fast when it's fashionable. That weekend, Dad and I met for coffee. We didn't talk much. The silence between us felt whole again. When the waitress refilled our cups, he said, "You remind me of your mother when she left a storm. No anger, just decision." I smiled. She always said sometimes you win by walking away first. As we left, a street musician played the national anthem on an old trumpet. The notes cracked halfway through, but never stopped. Imperfect, persistent, beautiful. And in that raw sound, I finally understood. Real strength isn't about never breaking. It's about breaking with dignity and never letting them see you beg to be mended. Weeks went by, and the noise faded, but the ache stayed. Each morning before sunrise, I made coffee and watched the harbor wake, the ocean calm and indifferent, mirroring whatever I carried inside. One morning, I opened my laptop and began to write, not a defense, not revenge, just truth. I wrote about my mother and how she taught me that real honor doesn't glitter. It breathes quietly in what we do when no one watches. I wrote about veterans who came home invisible and the women who served beside them, carrying burdens no one ever named. Then I wrote a single line that felt like a release. Sometimes the people who mock your worth are simply terrified they have none. I sent it to Veterans Voice magazine. 2 days later, it appeared on the front page. It spread faster than the scandal ever had. Veterans across the country shared it. For the first time, the story wasn't about Denise. It was about every unseen woman who'd worn a uniform or carried one home. But fame has a long memory. Someone recognized her from the video. Headlines followed, clients canceled, sponsors pulled out. That evening, she came to my door, barefaced, shaking. "I came to apologize," she said softly. "I was jealous. I didn't hate her. I only felt tired. You don't need forgiveness." I told her, "Just live with it." When she left, I looked at my mother's insignia on the wall, gleaming faintly in the light. For the first time in years, I felt still. About a month later, Dad called. His voice carried that uneasy tremor I'd learned to recognize long ago. "You might want to sit down," he said. "Denise is trying to sell my Navy badges, the ones from the carrier years." My stomach dropped. He sent me a link, an online auction labeled Authentic Military Memorabilia, Private Collection. There they were, his engraved lighter, the patches he'd sewn on himself, and a framed photo of him and Mom, smiling on the deck of the old ship. It wasn't greed anymore. It was desperation. Denise was selling what didn't belong to her. The past, our history, the proof that something good had once lived in that house. I forwarded the listing to the Veterans Historical Association. Within hours, the auction froze. Reporters reached out. The old scandal caught fire again. The headline read, "Disgraced boutique owner caught selling husband's military memorabilia." When the police arrived at her shop, she didn't argue. She just stood there, tired, hollow, a woman emptied out by her own choices. Dad said quietly, "She lost everything." "No," I told him. "She sold it herself." He moved back into his old house soon after. The first thing we did was hang Mom's photo in the living room again, the one Denise had packed away years ago. He brewed 2 cups of coffee and set one in front of me. "I should have stood up sooner," he said. "You just did." I replied, "We never spoke of her again. We didn't need to." That night, I placed my mother's insignia on the mantel beside her picture. The gold caught the lamplight, faint, steady, alive. For the first time in years, that house felt like home again. 2 years later, Charleston hadn't changed much, but I had. The sea was calm that morning. The sky brushed with pink as Dad and I stood by the Atlantic Rescue Monument, built to honor those who saved lives at sea. I had donated Mom's insignia to the National Maritime Museum, where it now rested behind glass, under her name. Layat. Marjorie Raymond. Air Rescue Wing. 1997. When the ribbon was cut, the applause was soft but full of heart. Captain Redding was there, frail but smiling. "Your mother saved lives," he said, "and you saved her story." I squeezed his hand and thanked him for reminding people to see what matters. After the ceremony, Dad and I walked the pier. The air smelled of salt and old engines. "You ever hear from her?" he asked. "No," I said, "and that's fine." I looked at the water shimmering gold. Forgiveness isn't letting them back in, it's setting them down. And at last, I felt free.